Good afternoon to you. Mark's out of HurricaneTrack.com here. It is Tuesday, the 29th of March, 2022. And you might be thinking, hey, that's not your office. I'm on vacation. Spring break time with the family, spending a few days with them before conference season starts up. I'll be out of town next week at the National Tropical Weather Conference. I'll show you that in just a minute here at the end of today's update. And then after that, it's on to the National Hurricane Conference in Orlando. And then we're going to have spring severe weather season, at least in the Great Plains. It's already happening in the Deep South, as you guys know already. That's going to start kicking up, especially as we get towards the latter part of April and into May. So I am going to be a busy person away from the family, so it's good to be able to spend some vacation time with them during the kids' spring break. So here I am doing an update for you. Let's see what we got going on out there in the world of the tropics. First, a few areas of interest here, a little tropical storm action. Way out here between Australia and Madagascar there and the parts of the Indian Ocean. Halima, I guess that's how you say that, a tropical storm. Not really bothering anybody in terms of a major impact event. Any land masses or islands that are in that vicinity, sure, they get some impacts, but nothing major. And then a few areas of interest along the northwest coast of Australia, pretty good distance away anyway. And another area of interest here on the northeast coast, just kind of hanging out there, 97P, not organizing too much. And then just west of the Philippines, an area of circulation developing, 93 West, as it's called, W for West, Western Pacific. And that too, bears watching, but none of these systems pose any threat of becoming a major news-making, high-impact event. So that's good. It's always hurricane season somewhere, so we figured we'd take a look at that first. All right, sliding on over to the Atlantic Basin, visible satellite animation this afternoon. A couple of things to point out to you. First, sorry about the northwest flow here coming out of Canada and elsewhere. Not Canada's fault, but the cold air certainly is there. Chilly this morning in Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm not in Wilmington, but it was chilly there. 34 degrees, I think, was the low or something like that. Yikes. That strong northwest flow, you saw what happened with that yesterday up here in Pennsylvania as the flow came across the lakes. There was a lot of instability, steep lapse rates in the atmosphere, and as such we saw that terrible snow squall that caused at least 3 fatalities and just that horrifying pile up there on I-81, I think it was, in Pennsylvania. And this time of year is very interesting in the transition period between winter and spring. You have the sun warming up the ground and the atmosphere, and so you've got this sort of bubbling motion going on, but then you've got cold air aloft and energy coming in with that instability. There is some moisture coming off the Great Lakes. They are starting to warm up, so you're adding some moisture from that. And then just the strong pulse of energy coming down across through the lakes region and into, like yesterday, Pennsylvania. You have these snow squalls, these intense, almost like a thunderstorm that you get, like an air mass thunderstorm, especially in the Deep South during the summer, where it can just dump a tremendous amount of rain and lightning and everything all in a very quick measure. These snow squalls pop up, and they can be very problematic, like we saw yesterday in Pennsylvania. Now, eventually, the good news is this pattern is going to change here pretty quickly, in fact, and we're going to develop a ridge offshore, and that's going to pump the moisture in. As I've said before, that very warm Gulf here going to be adding to the ingredients list and create a big severe weather problem tomorrow in parts of the Deep South once again. So kind of a nasty pattern for right now for a good part of the east, but it will change, but that's going to come with consequences as we get a big severe weather potential in this area, which we will look at in more detail in just a moment. All right, a few other things related to the tropics before we move on to lower 48 weather. Not much of a change in the overall sea surface temperature pattern. A little bit of a cooling off in the eastern Atlantic the last few weeks, but there are some indications that the trade winds through this area will start to slow down. And I think we're going to see a warming up of this region through here in the next few weeks. But you know what? It really doesn't matter a whole lot. I was reading back through a bunch of threads over at Storm 2K, the awesome message board that's been around a long, long time, storm2k.org, and a lot of different people offering their opinions and thoughts and observations on different metrics that we watch for the hurricane season. And one of them is that even, if we go back to 2016, when we really started getting into this active period here, one year after the other of significant hurricane impacts. 2017, a very big year. 2018, we had Michael. 19, we had Dorian. 2020, 2021 speak for themselves. What was one big common thread? That was, it seems that this area of the Atlantic, the main development region, doesn't really start to warm up until we get to August, September, October, when the West African monsoon becomes more active. And the reason that it does so, remember, the monsoon is a wind shift change over a region. That's mainly what that is. So you start to change the direction of the wind. Instead of it coming strong trade winds out of the east here, you reverse that, it seems, with this West African monsoon being so strong. And so you get the reversal of the trades through here, or at least a slackening of them, and you start to warm up that area, the main development region, as we end July, get into August, and to September. And that's where the MDR, the main development region, seems to really warm the most in this string of very active seasons that we have seen recently. But I want to caution you, the main development region gets a lot of attention through here, and rightfully so, but Laura was not in the MDR. Michael was not in the MDR. Harvey didn't form and track all the way across through the MDR. Zeta, I could just go on and on and on. Isaias in 2020 up into the Carolinas. Not everything comes out of the MDR. All right, let's just keep that balance there. But it is interesting that, it's a little cooler out here now, but it really doesn't matter too much. It's only at the end of March. Let's see what it looks like as we approach the first part of August. Meanwhile, a little bit of warming in the ENSO 1, 2, and parts of the ENSO 3 areas, those regions that we talk about. However, way out in the Central Pacific, the La Nina pattern really holding on, and related to that, the SOI. Look at these numbers here. The 30-day average, a good solid positive 12. Even the 90-day is holding on at 7.59, and a little bit of a dip as of late overall in the recent pressure readings between Darwin and Tahiti, and you can see that represented on the graph here. So we went up significantly and a little bit of a dip back down as we swing through different changes going on through the springtime period. But we will end the month of March on a very high note here. So as these all change, and this goes from December, January, February to January, February, March, March will come in quite a bit higher than did February, indicating we are in this La Nina type pattern, basically, and this is the main driver here, the big point, no El Nino. It's just not going to happen in 2022, and as long as the Atlantic does not dramatically cool off in some weird way that we didn't foresee happening, we should have another busy hurricane season coming up. Probably a lot of western-based activity like we have seen these last several years, meaning that's where most of us live. So we got to get ready. We could have a bunch of storms, a bunch of hurricanes, and it looks like the impacts are going to be in the western part of the basin again. And we'll get a better look at that too with some data coming up from Ben Knoll in a couple of weeks. I'll talk about that before I sign off today. All right, anybody else on spring break besides me and my family? Well, depending on where you are, especially along the Gulf Coast or Florida, water temperature is still a little bit cool overall. It's interesting with the northwest flow and just the front that came through down in Florida here. And let's go back to that satellite animation. I haven't even, where is it? Sorry, right there. There's the front right there, all the way clearing Hispaniola. And so you got all this deep troughiness over the east, and that helped to my point here, pull down the sea surface temperatures just a little bit. There's the 26 Celsius isotherm, and it bounces around a little bit, but it got pulled south of the Keys and South Florida here over the last few days due to the cooler air mass, the stronger northwesterly flow that came through with that trough, and as such, not quite as warm if you're down in the Florida Keys as maybe you were hoping it would be. A little bit drier air mass as well. Nevertheless, there's the 26 Celsius isotherm, and then poking up right in the middle of it is 27 Celsius, or about 81 Fahrenheit. Everything's gradually warming up as it should as we progress forward. If we go back to the anomalies map, you can see the Gulf of Mexico most of it still running at or above the long-term average, and in some cases quite significantly warmer than average, especially with these oranges and these reds that show up. Those are, 2 to 3 degrees Celsius, in some cases warmer than we're used to seeing down here, the long-term 30-year average or something like that. And again, I'm going to spell it out. It's not just hurricanes. It's get the Bermuda high that sets up out here over the western Atlantic, the return flow around that high, pumps the moisture into the deep south. You get these fronts that come in, upper level lows that trek across this area, these troughs that dip down, and in this meeting zone through here, you get trouble. And that's what we're going to have these next few days, as I will outline moving forward here through the next few tabs. All right, along the mid-Atlantic and East Coast, again, cooler temperatures have come in. 26 Celsius line was trying to creep in at our last update, I do believe, been knocked out, as I've talked about here with this cold front that came through. Just a little bit of a delay in the nice warm spring and summer that's coming up. But overall, water temperatures is still way too cold for me, for swimming, for surfing, whatever. It's interesting too, you see the gradient is still pretty strong right here, the difference in temperature over distance, because you still have the very cold northwest Atlantic, and then the warming waters coming up from the south, butting up against that, so you get this steep temperature gradient. I like looking at that, as you guys know, by watching these videos. Stuff like that fascinates me, kind of a neat little thing. All right, moving on along. Severe weather, and this goes very much in line with what I was talking about with the warm Gulf of Mexico. It's not just the hurricanes we're talking about here, keeping you aware of all this other weather that's going on. From the snow squall yesterday, a lot of debate about that on weather Twitter, different people talking about how to try to solve the snow squall problem so you don't get these big pileups like we saw on I-81. I think it was I-81, right? And so also severe weather. Today we have the slight risk in the middle, right in the heart of Tornado Alley. We'll look at those SPC products more in just a moment. But the warm Gulf, I tell you, how many times we got to revisit this? It really helps because it adds more moisture, and in that moisture there's some heat in there because the Gulf is warmer than it should be. So there's a little bit more energy by the way of that warm, moist air, that return flow. Your dew points get higher. There's just more energy available, and then you get these mechanisms that come in, these kicks, these troughs that help to lift all of that. And then you have different wind directions blowing at different heights. That's that wind shear that we talk about. And when it sets up perfectly, the atmosphere starts to roll like a pencil on a table. And then you develop these thunderstorms vertically. You bend those rolling atmospheric profiles vertically, and you get tornadoes. Now, exactly how that happens, well, that's something that scientists are still working on, as they say. But that's the process. That's what happens in the spring. So here we are, just keeping you aware of it as we go forward. And it's not just thunderstorms, hail, tornadoes. There's a lot of other things that goes on with the weather that we want to make sure we're on top of. And for example, the fire weather. I just want to show you this real quick. Out ahead of these fronts, you do get a tremendous amount of wind that comes in ahead of these things, usually out of the south or southwest in some cases. And today, this is a big deal. You saw all the wildfires in Texas recently. Extreme fire danger here in the Texas and Oklahoma Panhandle, southwest Kansas. A lot of prairie land out there. A beautiful part of the country. I love that area. Been there a few times myself. So be mindful that this too is part of the spring severe weather regime, the package, if you will, the whole package, because everything is related. You don't get these big storm systems without a lot of wind. And the drier wind, it's a little bit dry right now. The dry line comes through. The moisture is mainly at the mid-levels, but down at the surface it's dry. All right, and so you can have this fire danger. So do keep that in mind as well. All right, so for the big ticket stuff, today, slight risk right in the heart of Tornado Alley and in some pretty big population centers, as you might expect. Dallas-Fort Worth up through Oklahoma City, northeast through there up into Iowa. Be aware of it. There will be limited overall coverage. That's why it's just a slight risk, but enough so that, yes, it's mentioned, and the tornado threat highest right in the heart of the alley there for the most part, including up into Norman, Oklahoma City area, just north of Dallas. along the I-20 corridor, the wind threat. And when we talk about wind, that is the straight line wind, those downbursts, things like that. Tornadic winds, those are different. Those are from tornadoes. But you can have strong winds coming out of these thunderstorms, especially as they develop into squall lines. And that covers a huge geographic area. And that can cause a lot of problems, blow trucks off the road, that kind of thing. And, wreak havoc with the wind farms that are out there. They can only handle so much. There's a lot of stuff to keep up with. And then the hail threat, also pretty substantial overall. And this will just go up as we go forward over the next few weeks, as you can imagine, as the atmosphere gets warmer and the dynamics get stronger. So that's for today. Tomorrow is another one of these. This is just happening more and more. This so-called Dixie Alley down in the deep south, coming off that warm Gulf of Mexico. A lot of people researching this, the National Severe Storms Laboratory, NSSL. They're working with a field team this year. I don't remember the exact name of the project for this year, but they're doing some research out there. And this is very problematic. You got a lot more trees, a lot denser forest coverage, so the visibility is not the same as out on the alley, per se, where you can see for tens, in some cases, many tens of miles, those supercells coming. A lot of these happen towards the late afternoon and evening, so they could go into nocturnal mode, where they happen at night. And then you just have an area of more mobile homes, more structures that aren't, less storm cellars, that kind of thing. The demographics, the people, the infrastructure, the geographic makeup of the area, all of that starts to come into play. But this is happening more and more and more. And this is something that, again, people are looking into, figuring out, are we shifting more into the deep south, away from the traditional tornado alley? Certainly seems so these last 10 years or so. Anyway, back to the point at hand. Moderate risk tomorrow. Maybe, we'll see, part of this gets a higher risk. That's always a potential. And that gets a lot of hype. I understand that. But the bottom line here, a big impact weather event coming up tomorrow in an area that has already seen it recently. And these are the different tornado parameters, pretty high. That's alarming. It really is. You get one of these long track, violent tornadoes over an area, and it can be a really, really big problem. So please, please, please make people aware. Text them. Let them know, hey, it's coming back again. Pay attention. That's the key to the game, being aware. All right, the wind threat, also very high from straight line winds, especially when this becomes more linear, and it will happen. You can have this huge squall line moving through, and that'll knock trees down, and cause a lot of problems with travel, like I said, along the interstate systems. So that's a big problem for tomorrow as well. And then the hail threat, not as bad because you don't have the same mechanisms, but these other tornado and wind threat is going to be significant enough. And let's don't forget, too, just want to add in, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, a lot of heavy rain across this area. So you're going to have the potential for some flooding. So be sure to pay attention to that again, especially if you're traveling. And with me being on spring break with my family, maybe some of you are traveling, or you know people that are traveling. Maybe they're just starting to head down to spring break, or they got to come back early, or whatever, especially to our truckers. We talk about supply chain issues. We've seen a lot about that over the last year to two. We're all sick of it, but that's part of it. We got to keep our interstate trucking system. These people need to know what's up. So if you know truckers out there, remind them, especially the tornado and wind threat for tomorrow. So moderate risk. And then, that's bounded by the orange, yellow, and green, which there are thunderstorm chances outside of that. Let's don't just isolate it and become moderate risk centric. There are thunderstorm possibilities outside of that. And then, just with some other leftover energy, even over here in parts of Colorado and New Mexico, mainly high-based thunderstorms, but those can produce, you probably get some thunder snow and some graupel with some of those, because they do happen in higher elevations. Then moving on out to day 3, the focus shifts to the East Coast, less dynamics involved, cooler sea surface temperatures in and around the area, so there's just not as much moisture. And again, the ingredients just aren't there for a major severe weather day. This can change because it's a few days out, but that's the pattern coming up over the next little while. Let me show you what it looks like on the GFS real quick. This is the lower 48 map. There's that northwest flow coming down. This is the surface, but for the most part, with your different thicknesses there. So cold in all this blue area, and then warmer over here. Look at those isobars. That's all that wind I was telling you about. There's a nice surface low sitting right here over northwest Kansas, and then out ahead of that, southwest flow, the dry line setting up. But in the mid-levels, make no mistake, there's a lot of moisture streaming in. Look at those isobars coming right off of what? The Gulf of Mexico, feeding that storm system, getting ready to take shape. Let me show you, too, what it looks like up at 500 millibars. Again, there's that northwest flow. Yuck, over the east. Sorry. No good spring break time for you guys. In fact, one of our supporters and graphics guys, I do want to mention this, Tim Melman and his family are down in the Cape Fear region. And Tim, if you're watching, sorry I missed you. I'm out of town when Tim's visiting Wilmington. What's up with that? That's a bad coincidence. But good for Tim and his family that they're getting to vacation down in that area. But you're seeing, Melman family, that yes, it's a little bit cool and brisk down in southeast North Carolina. Again, it's that northwest flow because that trough moved through. Not much you can do about it. You really can't change the weather, no matter what they say on the internet. Anyway, and then there's the energy digging in the southwest, the ridge in the middle, and all of this, these wavy patterns move along, and that's what gives us our severe weather potential here. And I'll show you. See that? It progresses along, and we get into tomorrow evening. Now, this is interesting to me. There's a squall line, look to me right there. But out ahead of that squall line, are those supercells? Put a big question mark there. Now, this is not a high-resolution, convectively aided model or a CAM model, as they call it, like the HRRR or the 3-kilometer NAM or whatever. This is the GFS. It's a global model. The resolution's not the same. But I see it very interestingly, you know, that there's these little discrete blobs of energy right here. You see them? And I just wonder, is the model saying, oh, those could be discrete supercells moving out ahead of the main squall line? We'll see. Maybe the global model is picking up on something that the high-resolution models haven't depicted just yet. But an active pattern for tomorrow, that swings east, and more troughiness, sorry, for the east. Ugh. And then a little bit more zonal flow, as we call it. See how it's basically west to east, not as wavy like that? That sets up at about day 4 to day 5, and we push this on through, and really much more zonal flow once we get out to about day 7, and then we start to reload with another area of height falls here in parts of the western parts of Tornado Alley. So that's about a week out in early April. So there you go. The surface map, just to kind of show you the same thing, everything moves along. There's the severe storms tomorrow with very, very heavy rainfall, as indicated by the yellows and the oranges and reds in there. The rainfall rate very high, and then that slides east, and then some troughiness there. You can even see this with your lower thickness values there, those blues. So chilly, some snow squalls. Yes, maybe some snow squalls still coming off those warming Great Lakes. So an active pattern for sure as we go forward, not just tropics related. You know, obviously it's not hurricane season yet, but that's coming. It's a little over 60 days away. And as such, the conferences are starting up. All right, I'm glad. It's been 3 years. We last got together 3 years ago. That was 2019. It's already 2022. That's crazy. Hadn't seen some of these people in person in 3 years. That's nuts. And we got a lot to talk about. The 2019 season, the 2020 season, the 2021 season, and then what's going to happen for 2022. So this is the National Tropical Weather Conference, geared a lot more towards broadcast meteorology. It's a smaller conference, a couple hundred people, and a very unique event where we all get to collaborate. The smallness of it really helps. I like that part. Big conferences have their benefits too. More people get involved, more learning over a larger time span with more classes. This is more focused on broadcast meteorology. How do we all work together with some of the different specialists in the field? It's happening next week. I am one of the presenters. I got about 30 minutes to go over a bunch of stuff. So that's what I'll be doing next week. I'll talk about it a little bit more on Monday, next Monday on the update. I will be back and doing my update on Monday, and I'll talk about my presentation and hopefully how you can tune in live to watch this. But that's the site if you want to check them out. And you might even still be able to register. I don't see why not. If you, hey, I want to go to that, HurricaneCenterLive.com, National Tropical Weather Conference. Then in mid-April, it's the National Hurricane Conference, the oldest hurricane conference in our country. That's in Orlando, and I will also be presenting at that conference, talking about the remote cameras, the different remote sensing that we do, the data that we collect, what we do with it, who can it benefit, that kind of thing. And of course, very proud to say it's crowdfunded through folks like you. And that leads me to my closing remarks. We're on Twitter, Fitter, maybe that's a new site. Maybe that's what Musk is going to come up with. He's teasing about creating his own social media. Maybe he can call it Fitter, whatever. Let me get out of here, all right? So it's Twitter, Facebook, YouTube that we're most active with. I do some stuff on Instagram occasionally. But this is really all we have time for, is the three big ones that I consider anyway. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We are supported by our awesome fan base on Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/HurricaneTrack, learn more about it, or aim your device at that QR code there. And we got the Discord going, the live cameras, a great community. They fund literally through not only the monthly pledges, but literally sending equipment in. You know, hey, look, we'll buy some stuff for the project, and we all work together like a cooperative. And that is how we do it, the power of crowd funding through Patreon. All right, that is it. I'm going to get this done and put on YouTube for you guys to enjoy. Big severe weather day tomorrow. Please stay safe out there. Even though I'm on vacation, I will be watching it. No matter where I am, I still got this guy, right, the old iPhone. And as long as I've got connectivity, I can see what's happening out there. Our back-end team, CJ, he'll be posting stuff, especially on Facebook tomorrow during that. So if you're following us on Facebook, there will be a lot of updates coming from CJ on Facebook as well. All right? You guys have a great rest of your Tuesday and a great rest of the week ahead. Thanks for tuning in as always. I do appreciate it. I'm Mark Sutton of HurricaneTrack.com. We'll do this again next Monday.